Hey Dreamer, please.
Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. It's been 5 months, can you believe it, since part 2. And this is the part 3 video of all the heroes that are coming after Nia. And so far we have covered many heroes. Many of them have also been released, so the rest that have not been released are as such. Okay, and I'm going to just review them for a little while before we go into the main gist of the video. I've labeled also where these heroes are used, so you have a much better idea of their utility, and these are the heroes that I think you need to have. Alice is just phenomenal. She has lasted almost a year in the PvP meta, and we're talking about the top tier. She is also great in PvE as a healer and a buffer. And I think she will be coming out for our summer this July, so be sure to save your rubies or tickets for her. And then we have Seek. He is a guild rate suppressor. He is going to be really good for the Fear Dragon, so make sure if you want to have better guild rate scores, make sure you keep some rubies for him. Then we have Espada, who is for PvP and mainly on Chris teams and debuff teams. Okay, so this is more situational and optional, because if you don't have a Chris Plus, then there's no point in getting Espada in that case. And everyone who has Chris Plus probably will want to get Espada for that extra flexibility in terms of your team building in PvP. For Jave, he is great in both PvE and PvP. In PvP, he is just a great tank, and he's able to tank a lot of damage and deal a lot of damage back to the enemy. In PvE, I'm not sure where he's actually used, but he's definitely used in Gold Dungeon. But if you don't need, you don't really need a L plus for Gold Dungeon, am I right? So the thing about him is that he actually burns, and I do see some possibility with him being used with Adele and Rachel for a lot of burn damage. Okay, and Adele is gonna definitely be great with him. And then we have Casper. She gives extra loot in Field Expedition, and she's gonna be pretty important, especially when it comes to hell difficulty. Okay, Field Expedition. Her passive does work even on the offline, so definitely a great unit to have for extra loot, especially when hell difficulty drops, and there's going to be the hero related accessories that are coming as well with that update. Probably they will drop Casper on that particular update. Lee is just absolutely useless, so don't bother. Ruri is a Thunder Dragon DPS, damage dealer. Okay, she is also used in a lot of other PvE content, in your story, in your dungeon. You can use her as a secondary damage dealer in your Soulstone dungeon for faster clearing, so definitely a great unit to have alongside Cosette. We have Pai Jiao here. He is used in CC status effect comps, so again, depending on what type of composition you like, I think he is pretty optional. Okay, and for Karma, I didn't put him as a must pull even though he's an L+. The reason for that is because I feel he is more strategically placed in tank teams or semi-tank teams. Okay, so even though he counters the ace comp and he lasts for a really long time as well, I think it's still okay. It depends on your resources, to be honest, at that point. Seeing how there are so many L+ coming out and the frequency of the L+, well, as much as I would love for you to have him, it still comes down to what type of teams you're running and do you have the resources to get him. Orly is not really a must pull as well, but she's a great range unit to be used alongside Rin. So if you are intending to go down the route of using Orly, or rather a range comp, then Orly is a possible hero to get. She does last pretty long in the meta as well. Okay, even up till now, I believe she is still one of the top, next to top range heroes, because the top range heroes in PvP are just Yuri and Rin, even in the Korean meta right now. And then for Kagura, even though she is designed for PvP, she is used only in PvE because she's just that bad in PvP, even though her skill set is meant for PvP. Her particular use in PvE is because she increases crit damage of your allies. So she's used in a fixed team in guild raid. For Carl, he is very optional because he is kind of like a DPS but supports the tank comps because of his fixed damage. Like in a regular speed comp, he probably won't shine as much and you are better off using other damage dealers instead. So he's also an optional L+ that I would suggest pulling for. For Taka, he is for PvE. Similar to Kagura, he is used in guild raid Okay, as a damage buffer, he does increase the damage of single target damage, and I think increases defense, ignoring efficiency of your allies as well. So he's definitely going to bump your damage up quite a bit. I left him as optional because he is definitely not a must-have unless you are really you're really concerned about increasing your guild rate scores or pushing for your guild rate. Then I think he is a great unit to have. Take note that of course he is a DPS unit, so his codex buff is going to be helpful as well. The Orochi Kagura coming up with Teo is not good, so don't bother. Teo is amazing, still used even after his nerf, okay, in Korea server, so he'll probably land on a global server with a slight nerf. I think it's about the field that he casts is just going to be a little, maybe 1 or 2 seconds shorter. Yeah, so that's just about it. So don't think that, you know, he got a huge nerf. He's still a great hero for both PvE and PvP. PvE because he is a suppressor in the Orochi raid, okay, so he can be used there. For Cheng Chen, she is no longer used as I see in PvP in Korea server, but nonetheless she can be a great hero at launch. And for Nia, she is used in PvP. She is primarily in CC teams and shock teams as well, okay, and I think she is also an optional hero because her usage is pretty niche. So if you are really gonna run that kind of team, then you will consider picking her up, okay? And Bolt Z is going to be the next hero after Nia. He is primarily designed to complement Nia and create this very ultimate shock team. So for the passive, he is basically a self-destructing hero, whereby when he dies, he will deal a huge AoE damage and has 100% chance to shock all the targets in the area, and he will also deal additional damage to universal and defensive type enemies. On his actual lasting passive, it just increases his debuff duration, okay, for himself. For his skill 1, he becomes unstoppable, charges, deals AoE damage, has a 60% chance to paralyze, okay, not shock. And if he is in the charge mode, he will increase ally skill cooldown, increase resistance, okay, by 50% for 15 seconds, and that is unremovable. His exclusive equipment will add on to this particular skill, whereby he will also apply a charge that is not removable, and in the charge mode he will reduce allies damage received. Okay, I know it's a lot to take in, okay, because there is a charge mode and a non-charge mode effect. The charge mode effect basically adds on to the non-charge mode effect to make it this very big skill, okay. For his skill 2, it is a single target attack, has a 100% chance to shock and prevent the enemy skill gauge from increasing. And in his charge mode, on top of that, he will also increase his own ultimate skill gauge by 30%. For his skill 3, he casts an unremovable shield, and he also increases his attack. In his charge mode, he will reset the cooldown of skill 1 and 2. This makes him even more efficient in terms of his damage dealing. Then for his ultimate, he becomes invincible, that deals huge AoE damage, has a 60% chance to paralyze, and 100% chance to remove buffs, 100% chance to be charged. Okay, this is on himself and it's unremovable. So basically, once he gets his ultimate skill, all his skills will be automatically buffed in that sense. Okay, so that is why you really want him to get his ultimate very quickly, so that he will be able to continuously be in this charge mode, so that he will be at his maximum efficiency. Now the thing about Bolt Z is that he was initially designed to go with Nia, and Nia didn't really last. I mean, she's still good as a unit, but in the top rankings, she's not used there because, you know, there are just so many other heroes better than running Nia and Bolt, because they kind of come in a pair. So the thing about Bolt was that he was dropped very quickly because Nia was dropped very quickly, and they decided to revamp him. And what I'm talking about now is the revamped skill set. So even with his revamped skill set, I don't really see much of the Korean players using him at all. But when he comes to our global server, he probably will get his revamped skill set, making him a much better unit than he was in Korea. So in case you want to compare, I don't think it's fair for you to compare in this case. But just note that the design for him as a DPS doesn't really gel well right now in our meta. So I guess he is kind of like a gimmicky unit, okay, if you want to see it that way. Then we have Wolyoung. Wolyoung is a tank unit. Okay, she is part of the season 2 story. She is one of the antagonists. And for her skill set, she increases her defense for 10 seconds when she blocks damage, and it can be stacked up to 7 times, sorry. And for her lasting effect, she will increase her own block efficiency. So many Korean players actually use her on a full block set, or rather on a 3 block 2 defense, or you can also do the other way around whereby you use 3 defense and 2 block. It's all fine as long as she has some block. Okay. For her skill 1, she teleports to the target, deals AoE damage, and has a chance to taunt, place taunt on herself. For her skill 2, she does AoE damage and has a 100% chance to reduce death resistance for 15 seconds and reduces the damage of the enemies. For her skill 3, she increases block rate of all allies and grants herself a shield, okay, based on a percentage of her defense, which is going to tie in very well with her passive, because her passive is going to give her insane defense. And she also increases her status effect resistance. For her ultimate, she does get counter attack, whereby she will deal damage back whenever she gets hit, okay, based on the amount of her defense, which is also going to be very stacked. And she will also have an 80% chance to apply 3 taunt stacks. I think this, when I translated this, it gave me this 3 taunt stacks, but I think it is a damage over time skill, whereby she will hit 3 times, okay, and has 80% chance to apply taunt on all 3 hits on herself. Yeah, and she also have a 40% chance to apply death on this skill. So I mean, immediately when you read about death, you will think of Chris Plus, and definitely she is used with Chris Plus in all Korean compositions that I've seen. Okay, she is definitely one of the better tanks that also is used to the current day. And but I would say her usage is pretty niche. Like, she is mostly used with Chris Plus and never outside of any team that doesn't have Chris Plus. Okay, so if you are thinking of teams to design around Chris Plus, I think this is definitely a great pickup for you. Okay, but on top of that, because Korean now has a tag team PvP whereby you use 3 teams in PvP, she is used a lot from what I've seen in the top tiers. Okay, so I guess her utility is still there as a tank unit. Okay, definitely a great skill set for sure, and death is always a bonus, okay, if she managed to land it. But she is really there to complement Chris Plus in the main PvP team. So yeah, if you want to run death teams with Espada and Wolyoung, I think you can probably pick her up. Moving on, we have Clemyth. Clemyth is one of the most powerful heroes in the entire game, and if anything, okay, if you're thinking, oh, should I actually pull for Bulk Plus, I would say no. Because Clemyth is just a game changer for the entire game, PvP game, anywhere basically. And she is the first Legend Plus support hero. So basically what she does is she casts a shield on all allies based on her max HP, and from level 17 skill effect onwards, this shield actually has a healing effect. That is how crazy it is. And I'm not done with that. Note that her passive has a 20-second cooldown, which means she's going to be casting this shield on your allies every 20 seconds. That is insane. And imagine when you build her out all the way, she's going to be healing your team every 20 seconds. That is just, yeah, insane. Okay, not only that, she gives allies straight up skill cooldown increase immunity. Not even a resistance, it's just complete immunity. And this is the first time I think we have seen a hero in 7 Nights 2 that gives complete immunity to a particular debuff, a particular effect. Yeah, so definitely a great hero already just from the passive alone. For her skill 1, she does AoE damage and has a 100% chance to enhance debuffs and buffs. And in PvP, she increases ultimate skill damage. And in PvP, she increases the ultimate skill gauge of all allies except for tanks and supports. So what is this enhancement about? It basically converts all debuffs and buffs to become unremovable. It's insane. Honestly, I mean, imagine imagine just shutting down all the buff removal skills. Imagine just shutting down all the cleanse on the enemy team. It is a very strong skill. Like, I don't know how they actually came up with this, but I think it was pretty genius. But yeah, this makes her a very important hero, and she's basically used in every single type of team that I've seen. I mean, even in a tank team, she still complements universal heroes very well there. So don't forget about that, okay? Next skill, she increases attack and crit damage of allies for 20 seconds. She grants all allies immunity to ultimate skill gauge reduction for 15 seconds. Again, another immunity provider. This is pretty crucial because she directly tells Ming to shut up, right? I mean, she completely shuts down Ming. Okay, so I think when Clemyth came out, Ming just definitely disappeared. And I'm not sure how Ming is going to live as well. With Clemyth still in the Korean meta, despite the remake, I don't think Ming is going to be long lasting, sadly. Okay, because Clemyth is still around. Yeah. So increasing attack and crit damage obviously already is a great buff in terms of damage output in PvP, so that's a great skill. And for skill 3, it's a very unique skill. She does AoE buff removal, and she also summons an area effect that cancels out any other area effects. And this actually affects many heroes, including Jave, Teo, Phoenix Resurrection Eileen, Nestra Shane, Baijiao Yonhee, Spike himself, and Orly. So these heroes do have, a damage over time area kind of skill. So this Clemyth skill cancels everything out. So they cannot use that particular skill. Okay, or rather, it won't last on the field. So it's a very strong skill again, and it's called Zone Collapse. I love the name. For her ultimate, she reduces skill cooldown of all allies except tanks and support. She revives one ally. And in PvP, if that revived ally is a non-tank and support, she will increase the ultimate skill gauge of that revived ally by 100%, meaning that ally is going to come back with full 100% ultimate skill gauge, ready to just kill off something. That is how crazy Clemyth is. She's a great hero. And I think without a doubt, I think you know what I'm gonna say, right? She is a must pull for sure. Okay, definitely a must pull. Save all your moonstones and your selected tickets for Clemyth. You will want to have her. Okay. Next up, we have Lania. So for Lania, she will be untargetable at the start of the battle, and this will be renewed every 30 seconds. Sounds pretty good. Okay. When her HP falls below 50%, she will reset the cooldown of skill 3, which we'll talk about later. And for her lasting effect, she will increase freeze damage of all allies. And of course, we don't really have many heroes using freeze, so this particular passive lasting effect is quite negligible. Okay. And then she has an AoE damage skill that does 40% freeze and also casts a shield on herself. Take note that for freeze, it makes the enemy immobile and the enemies will take 300% more defense ignoring damage. For her skill 2, it does defense ignoring AoE damage and does additional damage to frozen targets, and if she kills someone, she will reset this cooldown entirely. Okay. For skill 3, she removes debuffs on herself and does straight line AoE damage, 100% chance to knock back and 75% chance to freeze. Can be activated when she is immobile. Finally, for ultimate, it's a defense ignoring AoE skill, 100% chance to freeze, you cannot remove the freeze, and also allows her to recover HP of her percentage of her attack and resets skill cooldown for skill 2, which is the one that allows her to do additional damage to frozen targets. So overall, I think her skill set is quite decent. It goes in a roundabout way whereby it just complements each other. And I think on paper, she is a great unit, but in actual practice, she was released before Spike Plus, so definitely not very good because there aren't many freeze units on the field. Even for Spike, he didn't really come back because of Lania. And even after Spike Plus released, I think Korean players just realized that, they don't need her to be around. I mean, why would you use Lania over someone like Rin or Yuri if you really want to run a range comp, right? And having a tank in a range comp also doesn't gel that well together because of the fact that you are really relying on speed, right? And so with all these considerations, she was not really used at all despite the release of Spike Plus. Like, people were expecting a freeze meta to come about, but that didn't happen. In the top tier, no one really cared about Lania, especially, she came out after Clemyth, and with Clemyth having a confirmed spot in every single team, you are not going to have much space for, a freeze comp dropping all other important heroes. I think it was just unfortunate that even though she has a really tight skill set, the fact that she relies on a freeze and requires a niche team for her usage, it just didn't make her one of the more amazing heroes. Okay, and of course, shortly after her release, Spike Plus came about. He has an incredibly stacked skill set, which I will take some time to go through. For his passive, he becomes immortal when his HP falls below 70% for 4 seconds, so that's the first immortality he has. So upon becoming immortal, he reduces his skill cooldown, and he also has this chance to increase freezing hits, which I have no idea what that's about. And he also has a chance to freeze all targets in a circular range of 10 meters around them. Again, I'm not too clear about his passive because all the translations just gave me this and it wasn't that specific in particular, but I'm guessing that once he becomes immortal, his basic attacks will be able to freeze enemies, and on top of that, he will also freeze things around that particular enemy. I don't know, so yeah, that's just what it is. But for his AoE, for his skill 1, he does AoE damage, has a 100% chance to pull, has a 60% chance to freeze. For his skill 2, he does single target damage, prioritizes universal heroes, 100% chance to freeze, and apply cold air to all targets in a 5 meter range. So what cold air basically does, it is an area effect, okay? I think this gets cucked by Clemyth, I'm not sure. Probably will, okay, because it's an area effect skill. For every 1 second cold air, this debuff will be applied, and when it hits 10 stacks, it will freeze the enemy within that particular zone. And it will also reduce movement speed of any enemy within that zone, and it will deal 3600 fixed damage. And then for skill 3, he will remove debuffs on the caster, increase all his status effect resistance by over 50%, okay, and then reduce the damage dealt to tank and support allies. And then he will cast a shield on himself as well. So obviously he is meant for more tank comms based on this alone, tank and support. You can also use him with universe, so it's completely fine. I mean, if you don't really want to run a full tank team, it's also okay to run with universal heroes. For his ultimate skill, he becomes unstoppable, reduces damage taken, does AoE damage, does additional damage to frozen targets, 60% chance to freeze, and it will be a damage over time kind of skill, so it will hit 5 times, like boom 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 boom, and each hit will have a chance to freeze the enemy, so it can really freeze all enemies for 5 times. That's also fine. But upon freezing for 5 times, he will apply a new effect called Annihilation, and it is unremovable. What Annihilation does is that it will remain on the dead hero for 8 seconds, and the hero cannot be revived. Okay, in PvP. In PvE, it will just allow the target to take more damage. Okay, but in PvP, Annihilation will cause the hero to not be able to revive. So even with your revive accessory, this will nullify that completely. But take note that it does require 5 stacks of the freeze. Okay, so it's very conditional. It's not going to be something very conveniently obtained unless you have very high freeze chance. So he is actually a very self-functioning tank hero, and is used a lot with Karma, Clemyth and Teo, or with Wolyoung, Clemyth and Chris. Okay, these are two of the very big comps that are still used in Korea server right now as we speak. Okay, but upon release, of course, he was mixed and matched with a lot of tank heroes like your Rudy. Clemyth was definitely there. You can use him with Wolyoung. You can try him with universal comms and use tactical formation. You can try him with Lania. You can try him with Lania Rin. Okay, and also use him with Teo. So there are many ways you can play around with him because he is that self-capable based on his skill set. Okay, and yeah. Even though he is used less now in Korea server, he is used in pretty specific comps, which you can consider if you have those particular heroes. So, pull or not, I would say really depends. Okay, whether you like to play with this freeze effect, or whether you have specific comps that will last, or whether you're interested in running more tanky comps. Okay, so definitely depending on your hero roster. Then we have Diana. She is kind of in a side story with Spike. Okay, she is the daughter of Mercure. When I say daughter, I really mean test subject. Okay, but she calls Mercure father. So for her passive, she increases her own attack speed proportional to combo chance. So obviously this is a unit that you will give the combo chance set to. And with her exclusive equipment, she will also stun the target every 9 basic attacks or skill attacks. So every 9 attacks basically. And then for her skill 1, she teleports to the target and deals single target damage, 100% chance to track the target, and becomes unstoppable for 8 seconds. Tracking means she fixates on that particular target even if the target is in the stealth mode. Okay, so she can hit the target even when they are camouflaging. And for her skill 2, it's very interesting because it has a 5-second cooldown. That is incredibly fast. She will just literally be spamming that skill 2. I can imagine. It does single target damage, a huge more damage to stun targets, and has a 100% chance to apply predation. Predation is a new effect as well. It removes all buffs from the target, and for each buff removed, it will increase Diana's defense ignoring efficiency by 7% up to 6 times, so up to 42%. Okay, stackable. Assuming that the enemy does apply many buffs. Okay, if the enemy doesn't apply buffs, then Diana doesn't get a huge buff in damage output, and she will just be decent at best. For skill 3, she does single target damage and heals herself. For her ultimate, she teleports, deals huge single target damage, and also has a 100% chance to apply tracking. So on paper, she looks like a great hero. Like for a great PvE unit, she can be a very fast attacker if you give her combo chance, because she has attack speed boost, she has defense ignoring efficiency. But the main problem is, as a DPS unit, she just cannot outshine Adele and Rachel. So she isn't used anywhere at all, which is very sad, and really just for codex buffs. So unfortunately, I have to say this is a skip. Okay. Next up, we have Platin. Platin is also another great L+ hero. Okay, if you're running a speed comp, I would strongly suggest you pay attention to him. Currently, so for his passive, when his HP falls below 50%, he'll get an unremovable shield equal to a huge percentage of his attack. For his lasting effect, he increases the attack of ranged heroes, and he increases the crit damage of DPS heroes. This is a great lasting effect. Okay, he can be used in both PvE and PvP simply because of this. And his shield is also cooldown based, so every 90 seconds he can apply it again if his HP keeps falling below 50% and coming back above 50%. For his skill 1, he becomes unstoppable, charges at the target, converts HP to 65%, which is classic Platin's mechanics. Even in 7 Knights 1, he has the ability to convert target's HP. I think he was the first hero to be able to do that. So to see this in 7 Knights 2 again, this is really nice. Okay, and if it's a monster, he will do damage. So in case you're using him in PvE, obviously they considered that, he will just do additional damage. For his exclusive equipment, which he gets upon release, he will apply recovery reversal on the target. What recovery reversal does is that it prevents the hero's enemies from recovering their HP for 5 seconds, and they will be damaged in proportion to amount of his attack if they do attempt to heal. Okay, and apparently this only takes into account recovery skills. It doesn't take into account skills that actually drain back some HP. Yeah, somehow it is just restricted that way. So for skill 2, defense ignoring semicircle AoE damage, I think it's a pretty big semicircle, 100% chance to pull enemies and remove their buffs. Skill 3 removes debuffs on allies, increase their defense ignoring efficiency of range and DPS allies. So again, it's a great support, damage support for PvE purposes, but in PvP I can foresee him being used in your future DPS comps and also the current range comp which you have, which includes Ace, Rin and Yuri. Platin can substitute that last hero and you have a very strong team right there. Okay, that will still last all the way till he releases. Ultimate skill, he becomes unstoppable, deals straight line damage and has a 100% chance to prevent ultimate skill gauge increase. He also reduces the skill cooldown of range and DPS allies. So if you are running a speed comp, I think he's definitely a must-have for you. If you're not intending to run a speed comp, you're intending to go with a tank comp, then I think you don't really need him per se, because he really specifically buffs range and DPS allies only. Okay, so but he's also a great hero for PvE, so he's definitely one of those heroes that you should have higher consideration for pulling. Then we have Serena as a support hero. She is finally an L hero. Okay, she will recover HP based on her own max HP when she's using a skill. So unlike the rare Serena, which recovers HP based on attack, the legend Serena recovers HP based on her own HP, similar to legend Shay. Okay, but on top of that, she also applies a buff called Fever to herself for 15 seconds. And every 15 seconds, she will apply it back to herself. So at 10 stacks, this will turn into something called Climax. After Climax is hit, Serena will also reduce her own skill cooldown when she uses a skill. Okay, so this is going to make her very efficient in terms of her support capabilities, which also means you want to run her on skill cooldown and time acceleration sets, because you want that fever to be cooled down very quickly and continuously built up very fast. Okay, her exclusive equipment is going to increase her amazing capabilities, whereby she will increase allies' defense ignoring efficiency whenever she uses a skill. So this is going to be incredibly important for your damage dealing, okay, in PvE. For skill 1, she reduces the damage received by allies for 15 seconds. This increases the bulk of your team, and when she hits, and if she uses this skill after Climax, she will also give all allies a shield and also increase allies' receive recovery rate. Skill 2, she will do single target damage, and she will have a 100% chance to increase the damage the enemy takes. This is a great debuff in PvE, and she will also apply movement speed increase after Climax. For skill 3, she increases all ally single target skill damage. After Climax, she causes time acceleration for range and DPS allies for 10 seconds. All your range and DPS heroes will be reducing their own skill cooldown whenever they attack. And finally, for her ultimate, she will increase allies' attack speed. She will also increase the ultimate skill gauge of the ally with the highest attack, allowing them to fire off their huge damage consistently and more frequently. So overall, I think just talking about it, you can already feel that she is a great support hero for PvE purposes. Definitely good to be paired with Lina, or with or without Lina, also fine, because everything you need is just in that particular hero. Lina gives attack buffs, so that's gonna be great. So with Lina and Serena, you're gonna get tons of heals, tons of damage support. Okay, so Serena is definitely a must pull, no questions asked. Then we have the new Dellons Plus. He was released not too long ago in Korea, so we'll just talk about his skill set and give a rough idea of where he is right now. For his passive, he will increase the damage your allies deal if there are 2 or more DPS allies at the start of the battle, which includes himself. So all you need is another DPS unit like maybe Rachel or Shane, then you can get damage buff. Then when a nearby enemy is killed in PvP, he becomes immune to damage for 5 seconds, resets his cooldown of skill 1 and increases his attack for 300 seconds up to 6 times, and this is unremovable. So this is going to be very efficient in allowing him to build up his damage capabilities, and also to allow him to attack more efficiently. Okay, so it's a pretty unique kind of effect. And then for skill 1, he teleports to the target. Okay, deals huge shield ignoring damage. This is the first of its kind. 100% chance to apply death sentence for 15 seconds, and his combo skill allows him to do AoE shield ignoring damage. 100% chance to reduce the defense of all the enemies he hits. For his skill 2, he does huge single target damage, deals additional damage to targets with death sentence, and recovers HP equal to the damage dealt. For skill 3, he prioritizes universal heroes and thus reduce the damage of that particular target. He removes debuffs on all offensive allies and makes them unstoppable, which means they cannot be debuffed for 8 seconds. So he is kind of like a DPS damage dealer unit, but also one that supports DPS heroes. And for his ultimate, he becomes invincible, teleports to the target, deals huge damage, 100% chance to remove buffs, deals even huge damage to those under death sentence, recovers HP, basically everything from his skill 1, 2, 3 is just put into here. And if a target is killed, he basically gets ultimate skill gauge increased by a certain percentage, which increases based on skill level. So there's a possibility for him to reuse this ultimate skill over and over and over again. Okay. The thing about him, from what I've seen and heard, is that he is a decent hero for DPS teams to come back, but he has very questionable bulk, and this makes him slightly weak right now in the Korea server, whereby he dies too fast for anything to even be stacked and happened. Whereby he dies too fast for anything to be stacked and for anything to happen. So I don't think at launch he is going to be that amazing, because it does require a pretty niche team as well, whereby you need DPS heroes, and they did revamp Shane when this happened. So one possible composition that I saw was, I believe, Dellons, Shane, Clemyth, and Platin. Okay, you get very strong damage dealing capabilities there, or you can even use a tank in substitution for Platin. So I think at launch, even though he sounds really good and looks really good, his time is not here yet, and he could be possibly a very good hero in future when there are more unique or interesting DPS units that will come out in future, and they can all be paired with him. So he could be a very key unit in the DPS team in future, just not right now, especially in the Korean meta where there are so many other stronger heroes that are existing, and people are still building up their Dellons. So it is not really a fair comparison as well, to be honest. So by the time he comes, I think if you have the resources, you may want to get him, because I feel that he could be a cornerstone unit in the DPS comps moving forward. And then we have another DPS unit, and that is the new Evan. Okay, to be honest, his skill set is not that inspiring. I label him Evan 2.0. The reason for that is because most of the skills that he has here is kind of copied and pasted from the Universal Evan Plus. Okay, so for his passive, he reduces damage taken by DPS and support allies from AoE attacks. He increases his own attack proportional to his defense. So this already tells you that, you know, he will be there to support DPS units and Clemyth, because Clemyth is probably the only, Clemyth and Alice are the two support units used in PvP right now in Korea. So obviously having this additional line to support units, you know, it kind of gives you an idea of what kind of team you can or should be running him in. Okay, for his skill 2, he becomes unstoppable, charges to the target, deals huge single target damage, stuns, and prevents the ultimate skill gauge from increasing. So this is single target damage, okay, not AoE. So he only prevents one unit from not getting ultimate skill gauge increase, and he also stuns. And he deals additional damage to sealed targets, which we will talk about later. So again, very similar to the Evan Plus Universal one, also stuns, right? And for skill 2, defense ignoring single target damage, heals himself, similar as well, and also deals additional damage to sealed targets. For skill 3, single target as well, increases his crit rate and crit damage. This is exactly the same, right? And he has a 100% chance to seal the target for 15 seconds. Seal means he seals the passive and nullifies the passive of that particular hero. So that makes him interesting, because it is the first time an effect like that is introduced into Seven Knights, and I think sealing passives could be potentially very game breaking. For his ultimate, he becomes invincible, he deals huge AoE damage. Okay, this is interesting because it's finally AoE damage, and then he also deals additional damage based on his current HP, knocks down, and has a 100% chance to seal. So his ultimate skill is the key here, because it allows you to seal AoE many enemies, and this is where it starts to get more interesting, because you need his ultimate to go fast, okay, so that you can really cripple the enemy team ASAP before they actually kill you. And and you don't get to do anything. Yeah, so I think it's very early to give a proper verdict on Evan 2.0, because he could be, in terms of stats, he cannot be compared to all the level 60 heroes that people are running right now, because he literally just came out like 3 days ago, right? So it is very difficult to judge right now, but I think if there is a way in Korea server that they somehow built him to allow him to use his ultimate very consistently and frequently, it could be a strong DPS comp that is about to come, okay? With Dellons, of course, and Shane, and even the Ming remake is pretty good. And I think he can also be used in PvE based on all his single target skills, so I'm not too sure if he will completely replace a damage dealer, a DPS damage dealer like Adele or Shane Plus in PvE at this point, but maybe as a secondary damage dealer he can still be run over the single target universal Evan Plus. Okay, so yeah, these are just some of my thoughts. It's really too early to tell you if you should pull for this guy. So we have come to the end of this video. It's a very long video, I'm so sorry. I had so much details to talk about. And yeah, we have added a lot more to this list of heroes that are about to come, and I hope you enjoyed it. And before we end, I just want to leave you with this image of an upcoming Korea legendary hero. Can you guess who it is? She looks amazing and I will never expect it to be her. Okay, so that's all I have for this video. Thank you so much. If you did enjoy and found it useful, give it a like and subscribe to my channel. Big shout out to my channel members Tom, Gonzalo, Jeremy, Chilling, Nick, Fahas, Yamaki, Kevin, and Harlan for their support. Stay tuned for more videos. Thank you so much and see you!